right. So Chair Brown, you are present. Would you like to call the meeting to order and do a roll call? Or I can help do the roll call?
Well, just for clarification, so we are in full board?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, I'll go ahead and call full board of the Texas State Board of Social Worker Examiners into meeting at 2:13. Would you mind to call roll to make certain we have quorum?
Certainly. Chair Tim Brown.
Present.
Martha Mosier, professional member.
Present.
Brian Brumley, professional member.
Present.
Beverly Jackson Loss, professional member. Beverly Jackson Loss. Let's see. You're muted.
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Audrey Ramsbacher has informed me she wasn't able to make it. So if you all want to vote to excuse her absence. Megan Graham, public member. Megan Graham, public member. I can see you, but you're still muted.
But here I am.
Oh, okay. There you go. We can hear you now. Thank you. Mark Talbot, public member.
Present.
Thank you. Ben Morris, public member. Ben Morris.
Present.
Great. Thank you, Ben. You have 7 members present and a quorum of the board.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to take an action item for public comment out of order so that Representative Vu may visit with us and then get back to his duties.
Thank you so much. My name is Gene Wu. I'm a state rep out of Houston. And so I apologize. I don't normally read statements, but this is important. I want to make sure I get it right. So I had my staff help me draft up a little statement, and I just want to make sure to read it to y'all. Members of the board, over the past few months, my office has received numerous calls from applicants seeking to complete their accreditation through the Texas State Board of Social Work Examiners, many of which have been in an attempt to expedite the process as they have been offered employment upon successful accreditation. We have even had employers themselves, one of which is a major service provider to vulnerable populations in my district, contact us for assistance with this process to be accredited. Over the summer, my staff and I were informed by HHSC that working conditions due to COVID-19 exacerbated an already existing backlog for applicants seeking this licensure all the way back to March. None of the applicants or employers who contacted us were aware of the extent of this backlog, nor was there any mention of it on online resources to explain the delays in processing times or responses from the board itself. Instead, numerous attempts were made to follow up on the status of applications, were instead met with silence in most cases until our office intervened. When my team and I asked HHSC how to address this backlog, we were informed and assured that with the newly created BHEC set to take over in September, a plan to tackle and eliminate the backlog would be implemented with that changeover. Earlier this week, my staff met with agency officials from BHEC to get a status report and found that a plan is being developed to take on additional measures and incorporate more innovative technology to make this a more streamlined and efficient process for applicants. I am optimistic that once implemented, it will have great results. Unfortunately, this plan has no current timetable for implementation, and more importantly, offers no immediate relief to applicants stuck in the backlog who are potentially missing out on employment opportunities because of this. It is important that as a state, we hold our professionals seeking licensure to rigorous standards. However, the state's inability to efficiently and effectively administrate this process is currently the biggest obstacle barring otherwise qualified Texans from contributing to the skilled workforce in this essential industry. This is not acceptable. The creation of the BHEC was designed to give more autonomy in allowing skilled professionals from within the industry to offer a more efficient administration of their profession. I'm asking you today as a board to leverage this autonomy and expert knowledge of your industry to find an immediate solution for navigating this backlog in a manner that allows affected applicants a clear pathway to secure employment and serve their communities while their applications are backlogged. Now, whether this be an issuance of a restricted temporary license or allowing applicants to secure a licensed supervisor, as in some other behavioral health professions, I am confident that we can work out some type of practical and effective solution that serves your professionals without compromising the integrity of their accreditation. I will gladly ask my fellow members of the legislature for their assistance in this manner to be sure that we can lend our full support to help tackling this issue. My team and I look forward to working with you to serve the state of Texas. And just as a note, I have met, just before this meeting, I have met with our local health professionals, mental health professionals for my area. And they say that this is an immense problem that they're dealing right now, that they've not brought it to my attention before, but I asked them about it. But this backlog in accreditation for social workers is starting to become a serious issue for their ability to provide very basic care in the Houston area. So thank you so much. Thank you for allowing me the time for this, and I hope we can get this issue resolved and resolved quickly. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Vu. We appreciate your being here with us. We are working, I have met with Tim Spear, who was with HHSC that's transferred over to the BHEC about this concern. I've also met with Daryl Spinks, and we are looking at several options to see how we can expedite and take care of this situation and keep it from being a problem in the future as well. Okay, then we will move on to the next agenda item is the approval of the minutes from the June 6, 2020 meeting, the August 1st, 2020 meeting, and the August 15th, 2020 board meetings. Are there any corrections, additions, or is there a motion concerning these minutes?
Chair Brown, this is Brian Brumley. I make a motion to approve.
Okay, is that for all three meeting minutes?
Yes, sir. I'll make a motion to approve minutes as described.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Next agenda item is discussion of possible actions regarding the board's ethics complaints functions. First item A is the report from the executive director.
Yes, so over the last quarter, since the last meeting, the complaints review team had reviewed a total of 21 complaints. This board received each individual complaint on their flash drives. However, I'm going to be just doing a high-level report. And if you guys have any questions at the end, please feel free to ask. But the total by numbers is that one of those complaints was referred back to investigations for more investigation. 4 of the complaints were closed as non-jurisdictional. 5 were closed with no violation. 4 were closed because the licensee's license had expired. 3 were closed with disciplinary reprimands. 2 were closed with probated suspensions. That probated suspension for both cases were a 1-year probated suspension with stipulations. 1 was closed with a conditional letter of agreement, and 1 was found to be unsubstantiated, for a total of 21.
Okay. Any questions, any concerns from the board members for Mrs. Bradford's report? Okay. Alice, before we move on, Martha Mosher said that she's muted and can't unmute herself, that you have her muted. If you wouldn't mind to unlock her, please.
Martha, did you press the start? I think I
did.
Okay.
It works now. A while ago, it would not let me unmute.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
Okay. The next item is B, discussion possible action regarding penalty matrix.
So this is a agenda item that's a placeholder in case the board wants to make any changes to the penalty matrix. As you may know, it's currently being incorporated into the rules when initially it was just, a policy. So there were a number of items that could be mitigated up to a disciplinary reprimand that used to be a conditional letter of agreement, or down to a non-disciplinary warning letter. But that's again addressed in the rules. As far as the usage of the penalty matrix by the complaint review team did follow the matrix to the letter and found it to be applicable to the 21 cases I just mentioned. If there are any changes recommended or suggestions, that's what this agenda item is for.
Okay, thank you. Questions or concerns for Mrs. Bradford about this section? Okay, we'll move on to discussion of possible actions regarding attorneys' reports on cases where disciplinary actions have been recommended, formal conferences have been held, or State Office of Administrative Hearings have been requested.
Chair Brown, if you'd like for me to just briefly discuss, I guess, that particular agenda item, I can. We've had 5 new attorneys start here just on Tuesday, and they're all working on reviewing the different cases that have been transferred over from HHSC. I asked Andrew Hurt, is the specific attorney assigned to social work. He's listening here as well, so he can start to get up to speed on everything with social work, but he's been reviewing those cases this week, and we're going to start moving them forward now, to taking what we can to SOA and then working them through the process. The other attorneys will be assigned as needed. If there's overflow, we'll certainly we have those other 4 attorneys to come in and help with additional cases. And that's generally, there's 1 assigned, to each board, but they all will work on other boards as needed to help, reduce any sort of if one board has more complaints or not. So we're working through it, and they've already hit the ground running with it.
And I'm sorry, Mr. Hyde, who is the attorney that will mainly be focusing on social work?
Andrew Hurt is here on the Zoom call as well, listening as well.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Hurt. We look forward to working with you. Okay, wanted to check with you, Mr. Hyde, about the case that Mrs. Mosher and I visited with you about going forward to SOA. Do we need to mention that here, that that's going to be in the process of moving forward?
It's being worked on. I don't know. I mean, I'd be happy to give you more details. I don't know that it's really an agenda item covered on here that we can go into much detail on, but I'd be happy to give you an update after the meeting because yes, it's been everything starting September 1 is transferred over. So we're actively working that case and going through the steps of it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next agenda item under this section is items for consideration for future committee meeting agendas. Does any of the board members have an item they'd like to put forward for consideration? Okay. Hearing none, is there a motion to accept this section of reports?
I'll move to accept the report.
And this is Brian. I'll second Mark's motion.
Okay. Further discussion? If not, I'll call. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Thank you. Okay, the next section is discussion and possible action regarding the Licensing Standard and Qualification Committee meeting that was held this morning. In the committee, we had 3 sections. One section was other licensing appeals. In that section, there were 9 cases. We approved 8 of them to move forward, and 1 case was tabled. Second section under that is supervision appeals. We had 11 cases that we heard, and we approved all 11 case requests. The last section was examination appeals. We had 2 cases. One of the cases we tabled and asked that we're going to ask the individual to come in and visit with us. The second of the cases was approved. So a total of 22 cases were heard and disposed of this morning. The next item is discussion and possible actions regarding the acceptance of supervised experience occurred out of state by a civilian employee on a military base. And this request was brought forward by our board member, Mr. Morris, requesting that we allow individual civilians who are working on military bases to have the same treatment that is required under statute for our military members, their families, or veterans. And as we discussed that in our meeting earlier today, because of statute does not allow this, we've decided not to pursue it at this time. So that particular request was set to the side. The next is discussion and possible discussion regarding the effects of requiring approval of supervision plans on licensing backlogs, together with possible solutions. For example, repealing requirements that supervision plans be approved by the agency and any other rule amendments or proposals that may have be necessary to implement such solutions. And we actually did not hear this earlier today because of time restraints and wanting to move forward to complete that particular meeting to allow another discipline to have their meeting on Zoom. So at this point, who would like to start this off? Daryl, do you want to, or do you want me to?
I don't mind walking point and taking the first round of arrows.
Okay.
You know, one of the things that we've learned very quickly in our first week and a half here at BHEC is we've got two very significant problems in the social work realm. And you heard Representative Wu speak about it kind of from how they're seeing it from his end. But let me tell you about what I'm seeing from my end now as kind of the administrator of this agency. First and foremost, we've got the problem with the exam vetting, getting people approved to sit for the exam in a timely manner. We've got a backlog in that area. Now, we've got a plan in place to address that. It's just a matter of my finding time to review the contract with ASWB, get the details worked out. The council's already given the green light to that. So that's going to happen. It's just a matter of me finding the time to work out the contractual terms and get it signed up. The other issue that we've got is supervision plans. These things are, there's no other way to say it other than we're swamped with them. Tim, you correct me if I'm wrong, but we're getting roughly a minimum, and when I say a minimum, it's a minimum of 200 a month.
That is correct. With our record high was 700 in a month.
Yeah, and right now we have, I believe, one person processing supervision plans. It is not a workload that is sustainable. Even if I've got 5 staff dedicated to the social work program right now, it's simply not something we can maintain if I put all 5 staff on it. We're not going to be able to keep up with it. And so what we've started doing, or what I've had to do, is I've tried to go in and look at the rules and see, okay, that's not really an area where we can offload it to ASWB, or there's not any kind of fix like what we use for the exam vetting. So what I've had to do is go in here and try to figure out what can we do, because the problem, what we've got is a warm bodies versus workload problem. We've got too much coming in and not enough warm bodies to process it. So that means if it takes more warm bodies to process it, I can't do anything about that because I have a legislative FTE cap. The ledge says you can hire X number of people. I've hired X number of people. I can't do any more than that. So that means we have to look at the workload side of it. So what I've done is I've gone in and looked at y'all's rule to see, okay, what is it you're requiring, the supervision plans? What are in them? And is it anything, we could change or live without? And what I have come up with, and some of it is based upon my experience as the ED for the psychology board for almost 10 years now. I've got 3 solutions to the supervision plan, and I want to go over with you. And the first I want to start with is having y'all change over to the way we do it the way we did it in psychology, and that is eliminating the requirement for the supervision plan altogether. Because you've got a 2-step verification process right now, 2-step review process for supervised experience right now. You make the supervisor and the supervisee do a supervision plan, and then on the back end, you have a supervision verification form that checks to make sure whether the experience that they turn in matches what they said they were going to do in the supervision plan. Psychology doesn't do that first part. They just do the last part, and it's worked very well for psychology without these types of backlogs. So that's where I came up with the idea of, well, do we even really need the requirement for a supervision plan? Now, this not being my first rodeo at presenting ideas to boards, I knew I better come with more than just one idea because oftentimes y'all like options to choose from. So the kind of the middle of the road option that I've come up with is, instead of requiring supervisees to submit and have their plan approved, just you can maintain the requirement to keep the plan, but don't make them submit it and have us approve it. Because again, remember, it's the staff, that's what's causing the backlog, is we don't have the manpower to throw at it. So if you take us out of the equation, we should be able to eliminate that backlog. Now, there's a problem with that middle option, and that is, if you're not reviewing it and you're not approving it, then what good is it? I think you're going to have to answer that question from the governor's office and probably from any other legislative inquiry. I think that's a fair question to ask. And the third option, and I'll be honest with you, I don't like this option as well, and I don't think y'all will like it either, is keep things the way they are, but implement a rule that says if the plan isn't reviewed and you haven't received express approval within, say, 60 days, it's presumed approved. Now, I don't like that, number one, because that still requires us to review it. We already know we're not going to be able to review it in whatever that presumed period is, which means you might have something slip through that you otherwise might not want to. And honestly, from the applicant's perspective, I wouldn't want the possibility of the board coming back later on, 6 months later going, we didn't like that after all. And here you've rocked on based on this presumptive approval. And now you kind of feel like you've been stabbed in the back there. So I don't like that. I'm certainly not advocating for that. I was just trying to think of different things to solve this problem. And that was one I had come up with. So those are kind of my three primary options. Now, Chair Brown and I had talked about another possibility just in recent days, and that is the LPC board has I'm just going to call it a program. It's in the database where their supervisors can log in, enter the start date for supervision and who their supervisee is, and then enter the stop date and the amount of hours that supervisee accrued while under supervision. That was built for the LPC program. Fortunately, that came over. It may be possible. I don't want to say that it is possible because I don't want to get y'all's hopes up and you get all giddy about that. But it may be possible that we can adapt that for the social work program as well and do away with the supervision plans. Now, either way, and I don't know, I'm just going to say this, either way, we have got to change something, guys. We've got to. We have got to get the load off of staff or we're never going to get out from underneath this backlog that we're under. I mean, I just have to look at it kind of as a businessman and just tell you this is what has to change. We're going to have to make a change here to get the workload off of staff or we're never going to be able to crawl out of this hole. It's just going to keep filling in on us, backfilling on us. So I recognize though that y'all are the board that decides this. So please don't take any offense at my offering suggestions. I don't mean to give any. I'm just kind of here to tell you what I see on the ground and kind of try to give you some suggestions that maybe how to cure it or improve it. One of the things that we are going to look at doing that will also help, and this isn't so much on the supervision plan, I should have said this earlier, is we are going to be looking at moving all the applications for mostly for most social work, LPCs and LMFTs online, which that should cut out a lot of the man hours that's required just to process the mail. And we'll stop letting people mail in stuff. There's a few things you have to get mailed in, like transcripts and some National Practitioner Data Bank, self-query reports, that kind of stuff has to be mailed in for primary source verification reasons. I had originally wanted to move away from that, but staff showed me the error of my way there and said, no, you really can't do that. So there's a few things we're going to be married to on the mail. It's just the way it is. But the vast majority of it, we ought to be able to get away with or get away from. But that doesn't help us on the supervision plans. We're going to have to come up with our own solution here. And this is not something that I want to, I've never had a state representative come give public comment before at a meeting. So that kind of made an impression on me when his office called and said, hey, how do we do that? How, could you set it up for us? So that kind of makes an impression on me that, okay, people are watching this. And I mean, we've got to take some action on it. But this is not something that this is not a back burner issue for me. And I want the board and the public to realize that. I know y'all are mad, and I'm really talking to the public now. I know y'all are mad. You got a right to be mad. I'd be fighting mad too if I were in your shoes. But I can assure you that we recognize the problem I'm on it. I mean, that's what we're here today to try to solve. That's why this board is here today. Chair Brown and Alice gave us quite a bit of time on this particular topic. I mean, that's what they wanted to do here today, is try and let's put our heads together and come up with something. So I don't want anybody out there thinking that we're ignoring you, blowing you off. We're not. But we can spend time responding to those emails, or we can spend time figuring out how to solve what's causing those emails. And so that's where I'm choosing to spend staff time on that. But with that, I think I probably better shut up and let the board members ask the questions that I'm sure they have. And Patrick and Tim and I will stand ready to answer any questions y'all have.
Okay, so board members, whatever questions you may have or concerns, or would you just like to say, take this time to do this?
Daryl, could you explain the first option you talked about again for the supervision plans?
The very first option would be a complete repeal of the requirement that supervisors and supervisees even have a supervision plan. In other words, we would take that out of the rule completely. They wouldn't have to do it. What we would rely upon is the verification of the supervised experience after the fact. You already require that, so I'm not about changing that. It's just that step one function that I'm talking about getting rid of.
Okay. Tim, Martha, as LCSWs, what's the downside? What's the backside to that's a problem?
Muted now. Alice, do you mind to unmute Martha again? She's muted again.
There you go.
I'm now unmuted.
Okay.
So Brian, in response to your question, I guess, right now what's been in place for years is when an LMSW is going to seek that LCSW, the requirement for that supervision plan approval is to ensure that that work is going to be clinical in nature, because that social work job description can be more case management focused and not necessarily clinical focused. So that's the reason that that's been there. I guess with this proposal that Daryl has put out there, this is really letting our board approved supervisors who have been through training to be a board approved supervisor, they are owning that responsibility of ensuring their supervisees are doing clinical work. And I guess that's how I see it, that then they have that responsibility, and really they've always had it. They should be holding their supervisee to that type of work, and that is the direction of what that supervision should be all about, and the work experience all about anyway. So, and I guess, Daryl, from what you're saying, that the elimination of that supervision plan, that approval, that by rules and statute, that is something that is doable.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, because it's in rule, so we can change that.
You can change it. Okay.
So historically, for me, and I'm trying to say this delicately, historically we had issues with board-approved clinical supervisors. We had one academician who was very thought highly of himself, who was going out on a boat and having clinical supervision on a boat. We had another individual who was holding supervision at bars and having 12 individuals under supervision. And I know you're not supposed to legislate or not supposed to regulate toward the outliers, but we had quite a few. And I know when we did a lot of work years back when Dr. Noble was on the board and the vice chair, where we made everyone go back through clinical supervision to be board-approved supervisors if they had not taken the course before. There was a period of time where quite a few were just grandfathered in. You know, I agree with you, Daryl. Number 3, option 3 kind of makes me nervous. I think that would get us into some hot water. 1 is okay, but you and I have spoken, and I've spoken to others. If we can adjust the LPC software for us to be able to use it, however we need to use it, for me, if we could at least have something registered in the computer system showing that it was started, and then let it be the supervisor's responsibility, like occurs with the LPCs, to enter the data at the end and finish it off. For me personally, and I don't want to speak for everyone, I'm just sharing from years of experience on the board, that seems most palatable for me. But let's hear from other board members as well.
Does ASWB have any recommendations for streamlining the supervision review process? Have you looked at other states that are going through the same types of budgetary issues and to look to see what they are doing? We also had Dorinda Noble, who is a former board member, very knowledgeable, make an offer today, and that was to perhaps have volunteers, people with experience, go through the process of reviewing that documentation to help out. And would any of those be a consideration?
Mr. Albert, we had spoken internally. I'd spoken with Mr. Spear and Mr. Spinks, and I believe Alice was involved at some point as well, about using volunteers on an ongoing basis. The problem there is having access to the database and being able to enter data, and as volunteers, that's problematic. I think right now we have 2 issues simultaneous. One is, what are we going to do going forward with clinical supervision plans? And then what are we going to do and how are we going to address the backlog? If I'm talking correctly, Mr. Spinks?
Yeah, you're spot on.
And so maybe if we could focus on what are we going to do going forward and kind of think about that and get some thoughts in that, then we can talk to Mr. Spinks or let him talk to us about, are there any things and what we as a board can do to help the backlog? So. Other board members' comments?
Yes, please. So Daryl, what I've heard so far is option 1 is basically modeling after what the psychology board has been doing successfully. And the other best option I've heard is modeling what the LPC, their database. I guess my question is now, those 2 seem to be the 2 best options, very viable options. Where we're sitting right now, of those 2, which do you view, and Tim, y'all weigh in on this too, what looks like the most practical solution to get from where we are to where we need to be?
Option number 1 cures the problem going forward. I think it can also cure the problem, the backlog, because if you remove the requirement for an approved supervision plan, then all those people that are sitting there waiting, we no longer need to review those plans. We can simply rely upon the verification forms that they've submitted to us. We can kind of make that retroactive on them. The second option, the database option, that's one that doesn't help us in the here and now. That's a going forward only deal. And I can't guarantee you that, Mr. Morris. I think we'll be able to pull it off. But I don't. The CFO, Jennifer Nowak, BHEC CFO, she's actually in meetings today with the database programmers to see if we can do this. I think maybe we can, but the problem is Jenny and I don't know. We don't have the internal knowledge of social work yet that Tim and Alice do. So until I can get a meeting set up between all of us, I can't tell you if that's how good of an option that is. But the first one, and I know, guys, I know it's a big departure. What I'm suggesting, I realize that, and I'm not doing this lightly. But I also know that it'll cure the problem, because it removes that requirement altogether.
Well, you pretty well summed it up for me with those two words, here and now, because that's where we're at, is the here and now.
Yeah.
And I just want to be, oh, I'm sorry, Ben, I didn't mean to cut you off. So in terms of what the LPCs do, the supervisor going in and entering those start and stop dates in a database within your system, that's still not an approval. That's just that official documentation of start and stop, correct?
Right. Correct.
So even if we like that as an option, that could happen down the road. But if we go toward that, we're still saying if we want that, we're getting rid of approval as well.
Yes, we're going to have to change that supervised plan rule no matter which way we go.
Right.
One way, we're just repealing the rule and not replacing it with anything. And I think my recommendation is we go that way now, and then if the database thing pans out, then we can add that back in later. To me, that seems to be the most logical way to go about it.
Excellent. Okay.
Other questions or points from board members?
Chair Brown,
yes.
I want to play devil's advocate, because I don't want to, my job is to present you guys with options, and I don't want to come across like I'm just cramming something down your throat. I want to make sure you understand what the flip side. The one thing I can think of that a supervision plan probably does, and I think it serves a purpose here, is, you know, I don't want to say that all our licensees don't read the rules, but I can't say that all read our rules. And one of the things a supervision plan does is it forces you're signing a piece of paper that says, I'm acknowledging these requirements. Whereas, you know, if you do away with it, you don't have that. So I want to make sure that I'm fair on both sides of this issue, but honestly, that's about the only advantage to the supervision plans that I can see. But I do want to throw that out there, that it's a slap to say, hey, you need to realize what you're signing up for here, cowboy, because you're going to be held accountable for it.
It's unfortunate that you would think they would read the rules before they signed and said they had, but we have frequent flyers that
Yeah.
unfortunately. Okay, I'm going to take us off track just a bit, and I'm hoping this will be okay. I really, because of the importance of this and the significance of the issue, I'd like to take the opportunity, even if it's just for 15 minutes, and if you get your hand up, you get in within the 15 minutes, it's fine. If you don't, I'm sorry. I'd like to open to public comment. And so, and just specifically about these particular plans and how we may move to work with them. If you're here and upset about a plan that hasn't been approved, we're not going to address that at this time. I just want those individuals who have some significant comment they'd like to make about how we move forward to handle this particular issue. So Alice, if you wouldn't mind to drive that.
Sure. Will Francis, you have your hand raised?
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this. I would like to share that this is something we've been in touch with Tim Spear and with Daryl Spinks and with Tim Brown and with many others. And I think that I can't say enough just how much this is impacting the social work network of professionals in Texas. It is a huge barrier and an immediate solution is very much needed. I, full disclosure, am not a clinical social worker, but have spoken with many of our clinical members. And while number one is not necessarily always protective of the most safeguards, there are, as I think Chair Brown very correctly identified, the opportunity for some sort of bad apples. We really think that ultimately it is the responsibility of an LCSW to do the management of this, and that by putting that responsibility back on them, you really then do allow our workforce to catch up with the people needed out there. And so we really do think that with diligence of the public and others reporting any supervisors that are sort of treating it like a supervisor mill, or of anyone who does not take it as seriously as possible, are the safeguards that are needed, and that we do have the psychology board as a potential example to look at. We think that that is the best way to go. And I just can't stress enough, we have people who are still waiting from 2019 for approval. We have people who have completed their supervision hours and do not have a completed supervision plan. And so it is so imperative. I think that all of the social workers in Texas, but clinical ones most especially, would be so just appreciative and joyful, jubilant, to know that there was a solution that came from this today, and not something like the LPC one, which I do understand, but which is still a database that needs to be fixed and moved, and is still, check is in the mail. So we really do hope you all consider a solution that will affect the backlog today. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Francis.
Dr. Brandy Felderhoff.
Thank you for hearing us and allowing an opportunity for public comment, especially Chair Brown. As a clinical supervisor, and I know there's a couple others I see names on here, this directly is affecting our supervisees, the process, their concerns about starting supervision, even though the rules and regs say that we're well within our right to do that. And there's no rhyme or reason to how things are getting approved. So I have some supervisees that started in June that have approvals. I have some that started in May that don't. And I hear from people going back to January and December and last summer that don't have approvals and can't get any answers on this. It's affecting, you know, their ability to move forward in their work, and just their ability to engage in the process, knowing that they're not going to have to start all over and redo their hours and repay all the money and time that they've spent in this. I like Tim Brown, I'm not a big fan of option number one either. I think there are some things that putting a plan in place does for us. And I think there's some ways we can maybe still get at some of that. Like maybe we require our supervisees to complete the plan, but we keep it on record instead of sending it into the state. And it's part of what accompanies our verification paperwork at the end. If we want to have them go through the process of checking those boxes and signing it and acknowledging that they've read the rules and regs and will abide by our code of ethics. I love the idea of the online system where we can log in and it will prompt some responses. But again, like Will said, I think that's not a today fix, that's a down the road fix. And so I'm really hopeful that whatever the board decides here today will get some positive resolution immediately for those who've been in limbo for so long. Thank you again for the opportunity.
Dr. Dorinda Noble. Oops, sorry.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm Dorinda Noble, LCSW, and I'm a board-approved supervisor and a board-approved supervisor training provider. I had said this morning in the qualifications committee that to get us out of the hole that we're in now, I do think you have a workforce that could help you read through these applications pretty fast and get an immediate resolution. But I wasn't saying that I ever wanted to go into the database. I just was I was imagining I would come to your office, I'd read through some things, and I would put a approve or not approve note on it and then give it back to the staff. But I do want to say, whatever you come up with, I am very willing to work with you and help on that. So I'm not asking for anything. I'm just concerned about the situation. So if I can help, please remember that. Like our previous speaker, I do think that the supervision plan is there for a reason. It has merit. It's the time to make supervisors and supervisees plan out the whole event of supervision and take care of logistical issues as well as theoretical and professional issues. If you go to just a front end, here's my supervisor and we're going to be finished by this time, I do think it would be good to include some of those issues that you hope they will cover during the first period of supervision or the first couple of periods of supervision. So thank you so much for letting me visit with you on this.
Thank you.
And Pamela Malone?
Hello, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, I'm unmuted. Yeah, it's Dr. Malone, and I too am an LCSW supervisor and supervisor trainer. I think there's a way that somehow we can combine some of what's in the supervision plan into the verification of hours, where a supervision plan is somehow attached and shown that all those criteria have been met on the verification of hours. And including there where we initial that we've read the rules and regulations. I think there's a way to do that, where it's said, here are all the things that we've done. So it makes for a bigger package at the end. But I think there's still a way to include all the things that need to happen in the supervision plan. That way it wouldn't be so front loaded. It would ease the backlog right now. And we could try it out for a period of time and see how that goes. I mean, I really like the idea of getting some software that works, but I realize that that's going to be costly and timely. But I think in the meantime, we could do it this way and just assess what happens. Because the reality is too, even though there's a supervision plan, of really ever checking to see if anyone did that. So I think the verification of hours can somehow include that in there. It would be a bit of a package, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I believe that's all the public comment on this particular topic. Further discussion by the board members.
We did have one more raised hand if you want to.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Ashley Long.
Hello, thanks guys for having me today. Actually, I'm an LMSW currently in supervision, and I know I'm beating a dead horse when I say I still haven't received my approval. So I am all for piggybacking off of Dr. Felderhoff and Dr. Malone that we don't have to get rid of the supervision plan, but maybe it be something that we do on the back end, because I mean, I feel like what's the point in having the supervisors go through the training and all the ethics and things that we have in place in the field if we don't trust them to say, hey, we are making sure that our supervisees are doing what we say and upholding the code of ethics of this. So I don't want to be too long-winded. I just pretty much piggyback and co-sign what Dr. Malone and Felderhoff said.
Thank you. Okay, Alice, are there any others?
I don't see any. Daryl, I think I've accidentally muted you. If you want to be unmuted, there you go.
Nobody wants to hear me.
Okay, one last round for board members with any thoughts, input, or items they'd like to share.
Yes, and Daryl, again, thank you so much for your thought and input, and especially your concern mentioning the possibility of some bad apples, and there is a plan in place for those bad apples. It's called the CRT.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, I'm going to take this bull by the horns and make a motion that is a hybrid of number one option and also bringing in Dr. Felderhoff and Dr. Malone's thoughts as well. And this is going to be specifically, I guess it may help both, but Daryl, you'll have to help me understand if it does or doesn't. I would like to propose.
Chair Brown, before
Yes.
you make the motion, can you tell us the idea? That way we don't have it in a motion already
Sure,
to modify a motion.
sure. My suggestion is that we have the individuals requesting to go into a supervision plan and the supervisor complete some form of a supervision plan, and it can be modified what we're using right now to just very basic information on having to turn in where they're working and permission from where they're working if the supervisor works somewhere else. Just a very small form saying they're entering into supervision, when they plan to start, when they plan to finish, where it's going to be, and keep that on file with the supervisor, and then turn that in at the end with the packet from the supervisor saying supervision has been completed. That's my proposal at this point. My hope is in the future that if the software works out where we can use the LPC software, that we can move into something more that direction. But I'm not going to put anything in about that right now. I'll let Daryl and I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name, that's working on that.
Jennifer Nowak.
Yeah, Jennifer Nowak. If that comes to fruition and y'all think that can happen, I'll leave that to you to bring back to the board in the future some point. So that's where I am as far as thinking. Others
Tim,
think.
I have one question I wanted to ask. So
Sure.
I guess, you know, I'm thinking every time right now when somebody starts and ends supervision, they're sending in that plan to get it approved, to get it started. If they change supervisors, if they have changed jobs, then you know, that all needs to be ended and resubmit a new supervision plan. So all of that would go away, right? Even everything going down the road.
Correct.
So I'm just kind of thinking through how that works. So at the end, I'm assuming then a supervisee would then be submitting, they could be submitting maybe 3 things of different timetables of supervision dates then all at one time. And that would be okay under kind of what we're proposing.
That's kind of where I'm heading.
Okay.
That it would be up to the supervisor to maintain that information and keep that information
right.
Correct.
And to have those clear start and stop dates and forms, you know, and I did like your proposal for that form at the beginning of supervision that kind of lines out when it's going to start, what it's going to include, and everything briefly, not as extensive as our plan now, but we'll include some of those bullets that are there so that's clearly defined. And
Yes.
then we already have the end piece of when it clearly ends. But
Yes.
all of that would not need to be submitted. I guess they're not going to be submitting these pieces of supervision through, say, that period of time that they're, you know, getting their hours. So at the end, they could submit everything in one big packet.
Correct, from the supervisor.
Well, or if they've had 3 different supervisors, then that supervisee is submitting everything at the end of when they think they've met their hours of work experience, supervised hours, etc.
Correct.
Correct?
Yes. Are you comfortable with that, Martha?
I am. It's a change, but I'm good.
Yeah, it is different, and it's taken me a while to, I've had a few conversations with Daryl, so he can tell you I wasn't on board at first, but just trying to
Right.
think through how we can do this in a manner that's, you know, stops this flooding of paperwork and overburden activities for the staff, and see, you know, is there also a way to kind of help the backlog as well.
Right. And I mean, we do have board-approved supervisors who have had to go through a training to be that. They need to take the responsibility for ensuring that their supervisees are doing what they need to do in terms of what their job looks like, their experience they're getting, and defining what that supervision, when it starts, when it ends, and what happens in between that. They need to own that.
Yeah. You may want to take a look at your, I'm not suggesting do it now, but you may want to take a look at your schedule of sanctions and see what level of punishment you assign to a supervisor who fails in their supervisory duties. And you may ramp it up as just say, look, a little more cost of freedom. With the freedom comes the responsibility. So carry
That's true.
Carry it yourself.
Yeah.
I agree. And we do have that as a way to address any of the outliers that may occur through this.
Chair Brown, or am I understanding you correctly on the supervision plan? You don't necessarily want them to use a fixed plan that we prepare, but you want us to provide what I would call a safe harbor form, that if they use it, it will be good. But if they need to vary from it, given whatever the circumstances may be, that would be fine as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I think here's how I'm not, if y'all need to discuss it more, but kind of how I envision when y'all pull the trigger on this and you say go, you vote on it. What I think we're going to have to do is Patrick and I are going to have to get together. We're going to have to do some changes to this rule. We're going to have to come up with proposed changes. It's not going to be something that we can change overnight, but we're going to change it pretty quick. I think what we're going to have to do is once we get the rule ready to go, and Chair Brown, you've kind of looked at it and it reflects what you wanted, what the board wanted, we'll call a special meeting of this board. You will come back. That will be your sole job, is that rule. You guys will kick that up to the council. It may even be that we do a joint meeting between this board and the council. This is such a big deal to where the minute y'all vote on it, we give it to the council who's sitting right next to you, and they vote on it, and it's off to the Texas Register. I would have 17 of you that I've got to, or 15 of you I've got to deal with schedules on that. So I can't promise that the joint meeting will happen, but I'm kind of leaning that way right now. If I can convince the council to do it, which I don't think they'll buck it or anything, but it's just scheduling. Getting the 15 of y'all together is going to be like herding cats, but we'll see if we can do it.
Okay. So for board members, are you comfortable with what I was proposing, that we can turn it into a motion?
Yes.
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 Okay. So let me make certain I can phrase this again and get it out there. Okay, so my motion is that we change the supervision plan process to where an individual going into supervision fills out a form to be determined and submits that to the supervisor, and the supervisor keeps that on record as well as with the documents of supervision and turns the packet in at the end of the supervision process. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, Megan seconds. Further discussion before I call the vote. And because this is important in a significant change, Alice, do you mind to go through and query us vote individual by individual, please?
Certainly. Chair Brown?
Yes.
Okay. Megan Graham?
Yes.
Ben Morris?
Yes.
Brian Brumley?
Yes.
Martha Mosier?
Yes.
Beverly Loss?
Yes.
Mark Talbot?
I'll abstain from the vote.
That's everybody. Any nays?
Okay. Thank you, everyone. That's good work, important work, great discussion. I hope that feels like it'll help out, Daryl.
I think y'all, I think you took a big step here today, and I think it's going to help out a great deal. I appreciate it.
While we're here and on kind of this topic, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, Daryl, but are there things you think we can do as a board to help with the backlog and get it moved through quickly?
You know, okay, so we just talked about what to do with the supervision plan. So what do we do about the people that are awaiting just the processing of their applications right now or the exam approval, since we haven't got the ASWB thing implemented yet? Statutorily, we're in a pickle here. The only vehicle that I can see, and Patrick, Tim, y'all jump in here if you see anything different, but the only vehicle I can see that can maybe solve this is the temporary license statute. The problem with that statute is I think it requires the applicant to be exam approval. They have to be exam eligible. That's the problem, because that's where that's one of the backlogs is, obviously. So they can't get the temporary license because we can't get the process fast enough to determine exam eligibility. So the only thing I can think of, and this part of this solution is completely out of y'all's hands, and I don't know that it'll work, but the only thing I can think of is that we request authority to suspend part of that rule, the exam eligibility requirement from the governor's office, so that when people apply, we could simply issue them a temporary license. Now that carries, I would expect there to be a lot of debate from y'all on that suggestion, because I realize the connotations of what that carries. But that is the only thing I can come up with right now. You know, I suppose you could, as kind of a way to offset it, maybe you could impose some sort of supervisory condition on anybody that you granted, that, you know, they received a temporary license who under that waiver. I guess I need to know from y'all that the LBSWs and LMSWs, they're the ones that receive or that are eligible for temporary licenses. It is the nature of where they work. Does that provide them with enough oversight that if we did that, we wouldn't need to add on a supervisory element to ensure public protection? And another thing I want y'all to consider when you're debating this thing is, are they actually going to be able to find somebody that'll supervise them on a temporary license? Because if they can't, then there's no point in doing it. We haven't solved anything. So I'll just dump that hot mess in y'all's lap, and y'all tell me what you think about it. Tim Spear, you got any? You're not going to hurt my feelings if you say that idea stinks. Don't do it.
Oh, it smells horrible. No, I'm kidding. I have no qualms about hopping in at any point and pointing something out if I feel the need, but I am completely behind you on all this.
I have heartburn with just licensing LMs or LBs. You know, one of my biggest concerns is like the situation that came up with Mrs. Hanchett. The individual doesn't have an actual degree in social work. I'm really concerned about that. And Mr. Spear, do we know how many individuals at the LB and the LM levels that are waiting to be approved for licensure exam? Do we have that many? I thought we were kind of caught up.
We had reduced the backlog considerably, but the last count that we were able to do before the system got locked down for transition was in the middle of August or mid to late August. We're still in the process of bringing that process back up. The system is up and running and people are getting entered and all of that kind of stuff, but we're still in the build up and startup of the agency, so we don't have the exact stats for you yet. We went from approximately 400 unprocessed applications for exam eligibility in June to by mid-August to having under 50 unprocessed applications. But since that time, we've received, of course, more applications. I just don't have the statistics available for you yet as to where we are, but it will have gone back up some from that point. In addition, there are other duties involved in licensing that aren't reflected in that particular stat, such as people who were sent a deficiency letter because they were missing X, Y, or Z and have sent in their documentation, and then we have to go back, double back and process that. So it's a multi-layered question, and the short answer that I can't give you anymore because I've made it long is I don't yet know.
Okay. I think for me, I was more concerned about those individuals with the supervision plans who were needing to be approved to go into supervision and those that were needing to be approved to have completed supervision. Do we have stats on that, Mr. Spear?
As far as exact numbers, no. For clinical supervision verifications and upgrades, we are still processing applications received in July. For supervision plan requests, we are still processing late June and July on those. So the steps that you guys just took earlier to create this hybrid approach will be very beneficial in dealing with that particular backlog. And I do want to thank the board for striking that balance between public protection and administrative efficiency.
Hypothetically, what we just approved, we're going to retroactivate that to those still from June and July that were waiting to be approved. Are we able to let me see how to phrase this. Is there any way of knowing all of those individuals and being able to get a letter out to them quickly to say this is the new process? And I don't know if that's Mr. Spear or Mr. Spinks that needs to answer that question.
Candidly, a letter, while the problem with a letter is, well, we're not talking about the entire license, Esther. We could certainly do an email blast. If it were psychology applicants, we would, I'd have all their email addresses. The problem is I don't think y'all have been gathering the email addresses for your applicants, so I can't just do a targeted blast to all my applicants. So I may have to do a letter to them. When were you wanting that to happen?
Well, I was just thinking, trying to get rid of that backlog of those wanting to be approved for the clinical supervision plans, or to be told your supervision plans have been accepted and it's good, you can sit for the licensure exam. That's the two areas that I was kind of focusing on. And so I guess my question is, how do we let those that have submitted their plans, that are waiting to say these plans are good, you're good to go? Is there a way of capturing all of those and saying, just sending a letter saying, your plan's approved, you can move forward? And then the ones that are waiting, that have completed their plans, are waiting to make certain that we're saying they're okay. Is there another letter that we can send them and say, we've received it and you're good to go?
I think so. I think we can do that in the database. I don't know that we'd be able to do an email, but I think we could do a letter. I'll have to visit with Ms. Nowak and the database people to see what they can pull out of that. But I think so. I think we can make that happen.
And again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be putting you on the spot. Any idea of a timeline for that to occur?
We really need to get the rule proposed and get public comments and get it adopted before we send anything like that out.
Okay.
Because I don't want to send that out and then the council or the governor or somebody shoot it down.
Sure,
and
sure. Okay.
Got egg on our face.
Okay, so then that takes me back to kind of an original theme before we came to the meeting today. And again, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Is there anything that the board can do to help process what's there to try to get through the backlog quicker, or even volunteers like Dr. Noble, who was the chair of the Louisiana board, the vice chair of the Texas board, and pretty much wrote the definitive current processes for good supervision. You know, we've got people that understand and can see the plans and can approve them, but I don't know, is that something that we could do to help you and help the staff and also help the social workers?
It doesn't really help us all that much because under the current rules, we still have to enter that data into the database, and that's what's slowing us down. That's part of what's slowing us down. So
okay.
I don't know that we would get enough bang. By the time I got all the conscripts gathered and developed a plan on how to do it, probably this rule will be adopted by then.
Okay.
Or it'll be close to it. So I'm not sure it's worth me spending the man hours to develop that right now.
Sure, sure. Okay. And again, I'm sorry, I don't mean to make your life more difficult, just trying to,
no.
If there's a win-win all the way around where we can all help.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we're through with this part. So then I'll go to the C under item 4, items for consideration for future committee meeting agendas. Is there anything from the board members? Okay. If not, is there a motion to accept all of the information shared under item number 4?
I'll make the motion to accept all of the information under item number 4.
And this is Brian. I'll second Martha's motion.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Okay. The next agenda item is number 5, and I believe that meeting wasn't held. Is there something you need us to do under number 5, Alice, to take care of business?
Yes. The Professional Development Committee should have taken place today at 1, but we're rolling that business into full board. I believe it's probably best to go ahead and approve minutes from June 6th, the next meeting, because this is not on full board agenda. That's fine. I'll resend that and make sure it's added to the next committee agenda if necessary. But I do want to address the discussion and possible action regarding the completion of the requirements for the alternative method of examining competency program participants. As you may know, the AMEC program is being phased out, so no new supervisees have been admitted into the program. However, the board is allowing supervisees who were already in the program to complete their required portfolios and be phased out. I did hear back from the board's evaluator regarding the 6 individuals who submitted their complete portfolios. They are Phyllis Ates Dent, Belinda Esprit, Quintara Spencer, Sabrina Cherry, Aretha McJimson, and Jacob Thomas. These 6 individuals have been recommended for full unrestricted licensure and to be released from the AMEC program.
Any questions for Mrs. Bradford concerning those individuals? If not, is there a motion to accept them into full licensure, permanent licensure?
I'll make the motion to accept them to permanent licensure.
A second.
Okay. I'll call if there's no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? And I'll abstain. Okay. Alice, do we need to have any discussion about the jurisprudence exam?
I did provide to the committee, the Professional Development Committee, the feedback that we received from, the survey feedback that we received from the vendor e-strategy. Per usual, I just pulled the data from the last quarter, but it was a little bit early since we were transitioning. So for the time period of June 1st, 2020 through August 21st, 2020, we had, let's see there, about a little over 1,000 test takers take the jurisprudence exam. But typically what we like to look at are the verbatim comments that the users leave. Lots of great course, great material, great exam, great training comments. So that's very positive. I feel this exam is too long. I don't like the 26 seconds. It's usually the same feedback that we get. But I kind of also take the opportunity to make sure that the questions are still pertinent. I think though that moving forward, and especially given the transition, I'll need to comb through and weed out the questions that aren't applicable to the board's new rules. So I know a couple meetings ago, we had assigned to some committee members, splitting up the 120 question data bank amongst 3 members. I think especially given now with the transition and the new rules that that may be adopted, I'll go ahead, if it's okay with the board, I'll go ahead and do a draft and comb through that myself at the staff level and perhaps bring it to you at a future meeting to make sure I capture all the questions that are outdated or not pertinent. If there are new questions, I invite committee members, board members to submit them, and I'll vet them to make sure that they're accurate and add them to the data bank. But I think at this time, I'm not going to ask those committee members to do the review. I'll do that myself.
Okay.
Is that okay?
I was going to bring this up because I think we have had some rule changes. Mm-hmm. And I think for consistency and to make certain that there's some organization to it rather than people just submitting questions, there is a process that's been in place and a methodology that's been used that's kept everything on the up and up and not having any challenges to any of the questions. I think we do need to keep it at 120 questions or possibly a few more. But in the past, what we did was divide up the chapters within the rules and have 1 or 2 people assigned several of the chapters. And if you find particular questions that are no longer aligned with the rules, if you could send those to whoever we decide is going to take on this task. And that way we can go in and look at, if that rule's not there, then we'll just strike it, but then we'll have to replace a rule with it to address in the question. And certainly if whoever volunteers, I can provide a tutorial to help them understand how we develop the question and to make certain that it's valid and that it goes along with the rule and it's not something that can be challenged. I'm happy to have that meeting and discussion with whichever individuals choose to participate and be involved in that. I just want to make sure that we don't find ourselves into any kind of problems with that, if that makes sense.
So you do prefer that the committee members take on the task individually?
I would say so. If you'd like to go ahead and review and let us know if there are particular ones that are no longer pertinent because rules have changed or they need to be adjusted because of rule change, that's great. But then I think we really do need to, pick 2, at the most 3 individuals and give each a couple of chapters to work on. And that way we have a little bit more continuity to it.
All right, so I will initially go through and weed out the questions that are no longer pertinent. And if you'd like to assign me or if some committee members or board members want to volunteer for chapters, we can split it amongst them. Yes?
Okay. Sounds great. Thank you. If you don't mind, we can put that on the agenda for December.
Yes.
Okay, is that everything for that section?
That is all that I believe professional development had, yes.
Okay. Are there questions for Mrs. Bradford concerning the professional development section? If not, is there a motion to accept the information as presented?
Tim, this is Brian. I make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Okay. We'll move into section 6. That's discussion and possible actions regarding the Rules Committee. Again, today, because of time restriction and because of the content within item 6, we did not meet for the Rules Committee. And it's my understanding that the rules that we had proposed last have gone up through the BHIC and been approved, have gone to the governor's office. And it's my understanding, and Mr. Hyde, you can keep me honest here, that the governor's office has not responded yet to those rules.
That's correct. They haven't completed their review of all the rules, so we haven't heard back from them. The one thing that we have sort of heard back from them on is the criminal history rule, and that's primarily because it's relates back, similar to what we've experienced with LMFT, and which got reviewed before you guys. And Alice, were you able to send out a copy of a revised version of that rule to all the board members?
Yes.
Okay.
That should have gone out in conjunction with a memo. And I sent that to the entire board.
Okay, great. So the memo kind of explains why, why we have to adopt this rule, why we have to do this rule, what are the standards, what are the legal standards we have to look at when we're adopting this rule. And it also gives what was previously proposed and BHEC approved to propose. But I am with almost 100% certainty that the governor's office will come back and probably have issue with this because they had issue with some of the other board rules. So the proposed language with that is language that has been vetted through the governor's office, and they have said essentially if you propose this language, you don't need to have us re-review it. They wouldn't have any particular issue with that. So my recommendation would be to withdraw the previous proposal for that criminal history rule and re-propose under that new language that you have in front of you.
And that's a 781.420.
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Hyde about this from the board members? Okay. If not, is there a motion?
This is Martha. I'll make the motion to approve it.
Okay, is there a second?
This is Brian. I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's call the question for the motion. So all those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstained? Okay, thank you. All right, so that, I believe, unless there's something else, Alice, concludes the item 6 section.
Chair Brown, if I could interject, we still have to vote on the entire rule package, which was, there were a number of rules that went out for publication for proposed repeal and republication and amendment. So those, we didn't receive any public comments on them. And I would say, other than that particular criminal history rule, we would want to propose those up to the council for adoption. Now, of course, if we'll hear back from the governor's office, and if they have any particular issues with those rules that are substantive in nature, we may have to bring them back to the board for consideration at that point. But if they don't, we can move it along the process of getting those rules adopted. So the rest of the rules that were all in that original publication in the I'm sorry, it's the July 17th publication of the Register. Those we would definitely want a vote on as well.
Okay, so you're saying before we have approval from the governor's office, we should go ahead and vote on them, or should we wait until we have the approval from the governor's office?
I think we should move forward before that, because there will be rules they have no issue with, and so those can get adopted. If there may be some rules that they've gone through and actually moved commas, and that's all they've had an issue with. And in that particular instance, we can just adopt, because it doesn't have any real substantive change. It's just a grammatical change to it. Now, the rules that they come in and they say, we have a real problem with this, and we want a complete reworking of this. We want to substantively change this rule, and so the effect of this rule will impact people differently. Those are the rules that we'll have to say, okay, we can adopt. We'll have to come back to the social work board to rework. But at this point, since we don't know what they are, I think it's best to move it forward so that we can get as many of these adopted, and hopefully, knock on wood, all but probably most of them. I will say right now, I think there'll be one other rule that'll likely come back, which is the military licensing rule. We haven't heard back from them, but they did have some issues with the LMFT one. But I would suggest go ahead and moving it forward in the process. And if the governor's office has issues with it, then we'll bring it back to for your consideration. But as of right now, I don't know of any other rules that they would potentially have issues with. And I can't promise you that they will look at the military rule and not like it. So I would say move them all forward other than that criminal history rule you just voted on.
So Daryl, do you think the governor's office will be kosher with us voting on something that they've not 100% proved yet?
Yeah, because we're essentially doing it contingent upon their approval.
Okay.
We're not
worded that way.
Right. The council has to vote to actually adopt it. So what y'all are doing is just recommending to the council, hey, subject to the governor's approval, you've got a green light from us. That's what we're saying here.
Okay, great. Just want to make sure we don't get in trouble.
Yeah, no. Blame it on me.
Okay.
It's my fault.
Is there a motion from the board? If not, then I'll make the motion that we adopt the rules as presented in July 17th package on the contingency that the governor's office approves of them and send them forward to the BHEC for final approval.
This is Megan, and I second your motion.
Okay. Further discussion by the board members? If not, all those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
Okay.
Is that Mr. Talbot?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Then the next agenda item, number 7, is discussion possible actions regarding final actions in the following cases. Alice, did you want to present those?
Sure. So board members, you had received in an email a PDF of the final agreed orders for case number 1072160040 and 1072190012. They are before you for your consideration. Does anybody have any questions?
Alice, this is Ben Morris,
Yes, sir.
and I am going to recuse myself from both of these cases.
Your recusal is recorded, Mr. Morris. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mrs. Bradford? Okay. Alice, do we need to take these separate or can we take them as combined?
Patrick, do you have a
I think
two?
historically, we
separate.
take them individually.
Yes.
You can do it either way.
Okay. Is there a motion from one of the board members?
This is Brian. I make a motion to approve as described by Executive Director Bradford.
I will second.
Okay. Further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Okay. Thank you. Okay, the next agenda item is the report from the board chair. And so wanted to share with everyone that may not be aware that the Behavioral Health Executive Council went live on 9/1, and greatly appreciate all the work that Mr. Spear and Mrs. Bradford did to help make this move into the BHEC possible. We really want to appreciate Daryl and all of his staff for all their hard work. He's really been unbelievable, the amount of work that he's put in to try to make this happen, and I think it's going to be very successful. And so I really appreciate all of his work, Mr. Hyde's work, and all of your staff. I also wanted to share that the BHEC met on the 28th of August and unanimously voted to approve the Association of Social Work Boards to be the individuals to approve candidates to request to sit for licensure exams. And hopefully when Mr. Spinks is able to get to it, that he can review that contract and that it looks good, it'll be kosher, and we can get that action in place to help take care of that. Also wanted to make sure everyone was aware that NASW Texas is having their virtual conference October the 8th through the 10th. And in the past, we had been able to attend. 2 of us were supported to attend. I'm not certain how that will work this year, but if there are board members that are interested in attending virtually, if you'll contact Mrs. Bradford and share that with her, and she can negotiate with Mr. Spinks to see how the BHEC might be able to support that. Also, this November, the annual meeting of the Delegate Assembly for the Association of Social Work Boards will be meeting. There'll be 2 sessions. There'll be one at the beginning of the week, Monday, November the 16th, and then the final day will be Friday, October the 20th. This is going to be a new process for ASWB. There'll be items that will be recorded for individuals to hear and listen to and be involved with. There's no fee for this, so I guess as many individuals from the board that would like to attend this year certainly should be able to. If you would like more information about that, you can either send me an individual email and I'll send you the link to sign up to attend. I think more importantly, I believe it's going to be Friday that the actual voting from the jurisdictions on leadership, new leadership to come into office, as well as any bylaw changes or amendments will occur. And so I guess at this point, we need to have a little bit of a discussion about who will be the delegate for Texas. And we probably need to have an alternative delegate as well, who will commit to attend both the Monday meeting as well as the Friday meeting, because on Monday, the candidates will have their speeches and present. And then on Friday, the voting will actually occur. And so what kind of discussion would we like to have as board members on this?
Can you repeat the dates of this?
Sure. The first meeting will occur for, I think it's 3, not more than 4 hours on Monday, November the 16th. And then the final day will also be about 3 to 4 hours, and that will be Friday, November the 20th. And I will probably no longer be a member on the Texas State Board of Social Work Examiners, so it wouldn't be good for me to be the delegate or the alternate. I have to brag a little bit also and share that Mr. Talbot will be on the agenda as running for a public member board of director position. So we're fortunate.
I don't have any chance of winning, but I'm just going to enjoy my 15 minutes of fame.
Well, you know, I may be able to pull some strings. I think you need to have a little bit more work.
Okay, all right.
So in the past, when HHSC had supported us, they would allow 1 or 2 members from the board to attend. And ASWB always gave us a free spot as well. And so that our executive director could go and be involved, we always gave the free spot to Alice as the delegate, and then she voted however we wanted her to vote. Certainly, I don't know that Alice would mind being the main delegate. But if a board member wants the opportunity to do that, I just want to put that out there.
Yeah, in checking my calendar, that those dates are not an option due to other obligations I have for myself.
Okay.
Alice, this is Brian. Is that something that you would be able to do?
I would defer to Mr. Spinks and Mr. Spear to make sure that that works for my schedule, I guess. I mean, my personal schedule, sure, that's fine.
Hey,
But
Sam, I'm sorry. Which meeting is this again you're talking about? What date?
It's the Association of Social Work Boards annual meeting of the delegate assemblies.
The November meeting?
Yes, November 16th. is the first day, and Friday, November the 20th is the second day.
Does anything have to be paid? It's a video conference this year.
Correct, it's free.
Okay.
There's no charge. Did I cut you off, Mr. Spinks? Were you going to say something?
No, there's no problem with Ms. Bradford doing that. I think that's fully commensurate with her job duties.
And Mr. Spear, putting you on the spot too, do you have an issue?
I have no issue.
Okay. So do we as a board want to recommend that Alice be our delegate this year?
Yes.
Okay. Shall I take that as Megan made the motion and Brian seconded it?
That sounds wonderful.
Okay. Do we want to have a quick call on that vote? So all those in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Okay, Alice. Sorry, you're it again.
It's on my calendar, written in ink.
Okay, that's everything that I have. I did want to acknowledge that Georgia Norman retired. She had been our board support for many, many years, and hated to see her go, but happy that she gets to go into the retirement world. So really appreciate all the work she did. Okay, I think that's everything. So we'll move on to the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Chair Brown. I just want to report a few numbers from the last quarter since we last met. Currently, the active license summary report, we've got 4,124 LBSWs, 11,550 LMSWs, and 9,582 LCSWs, for a total of 25,444 licensees. Oh, also to include 186 LMSW APs who have kind of been grandfathered into the AP, since we no longer recognize that, but we do still have that licensure type. We also still do have 869 board approved CE providers. The CE board approval for providers is no longer in the proposed rule packet, nor is it in the council's rules. So that too will be phased out, as it has been with the other mental health programs. There are currently 4 temporary LBSW license holders and 26 temporary LMSWs, for a grand total of 26,343 licensees. So numbers usually have been holding steady for this particular profession at about 25,000 to 26,000. For open complaints, as of August 21st, 2020, we are looking at 313 open complaints. The number that I reported back in June was 314. In March of 2020, it was 326. In December of 2019, it was 364. So the number is decreasing, but hopefully now with this transition to the new agency and our robust enforcement unit, we can start knocking down those open complaints more efficiently than before. As Chair Brown mentioned, I do have plans to attend the NASW chapter conference in October and participate with Mr. Spinks in speaking at that conference. And now I've also have plans to attend the ASWB Annual Delegate Assembly in November. So I'm looking forward to that. I did receive an invitation from NASW to host a booth at the virtual conference. I don't know if that's an option to host a booth, but certainly if the management would like that to happen, we can make that happen. Operationally, I wanted to bring up kind of some suggestions for streamlining the current processes that we have. As it turns out, our committees, our subcommittees, licensing, professional development, rules, ethics, don't necessarily need to be held in open meeting. Only full board needs to be held in open meeting. So in an effort to streamline, there's perhaps a possibility that the board's committees move to having ad hoc, as needed meetings. You might recall a year or so ago when we encountered a backlog of ethics complaints, this board adopted a policy in which we called it the predetermination process, in which we had closed meetings with just a fewer number of board members to discuss complaints. And it was as needed. It didn't have to be held in open meeting. And we were able to kind of chip away at the backlog. This process is probably more efficient as far as hearing the number of appeals that we have for licensure. You may remember this morning, as Chair Brown said, we heard 22 some odd cases. Regrettably, some of those applicants had been waiting since the last board meeting to be heard, because it has to be heard, or we thought, I guess, it had to be heard before committee. But if it pleases the board and we are allowed to streamline that process and have these ad hoc committees to be used by staff on an as needed basis, and the board allows it, then we can certainly go to that process. I don't know that this is something that needs to be necessarily voted on, but just directed, just a staff direction.
Alice, do you mind if we put that in the agenda for December? I think probably to be fair to the board members, might need to talk about it just a little bit.
Sure. I mean, is there perhaps any other feedback or input from anyone else, council or Mr.
I think along with that, is there something in our rules or by statute that says that we are mandated to have committees that are assigned to consider these matters? Are you saying that there's nothing like that?
Alice, if I can jump in, if you don't mind.
Right, along with that, over the last 14 years that I've attended both committee meetings and the board meeting, we have always been told by counsel, and I'm a lawyer, I questioned it initially, but every lawyer we've had sitting with our group has said it's a violation of the Open Meetings Act for more than the requisite number of committee members to sit in anybody else on the board during a committee meeting. So you're suggesting, first off, no longer having assigned committees and having only those committee members attend, which might violate open meetings, but along with that, doing away with the committees and simply having this ad hoc process. And so there's nothing that requires us to have these committees.
No,
correct.
No, let me correct. We would still have committees. We would still have application committees and certain sorts of committees. A legislative body such as the board, if a quorum of board members meets, that is subject to the Open Meetings Act, and that would require public notice and the public to attend. But
so an average committee has 4 members. I mean, that constitutes a quorum, and so we'd still have to have committee meetings without having a full meeting.
No, so the quorum, the committee is a delegation of less than a quorum of the board members. They're not legislatively mandated. It's not in the statute that those 4 board members, because they're less than a quorum, meet, that has to be in an open meeting. The psychology board has routinely had committee meetings with applications or interactions with board members, as long as it's less than a quorum. And it's not an open it's not covered under the Open Meetings Act. So we would still have an applications committee that would review things that staff would need help with, but those would go to we could do a lot of it by email, and it would be simple as laying out, here's the issue, we think we'd like to approve this person. Will you give us a green light? If you don't give us a green light, do you have questions we can answer? And if it's something that you really want to question the individual on, then we can set up a Zoom meeting with that particular person and you can lay eyes on them. But the issue becomes is if you have, say, an applications committee reviewing somebody's, let's just say, previous criminal history, and they want to enter an eligibility order, and that committee is reviewing that particular person, and they make a recommendation, yes, we want to issue this license with conditions and stipulations such as extra supervision or whatever the committee might recommend. That committee would need to recuse itself when the full board enters the eligibility order on that particular person. So the one thing I might recommend is having four people on that committee. All 4 of those people would have to be recused when the full board votes on it, and you're limiting your pool of board members by doing that. I would recommend, although it's obviously the board's discretion how many they'd like to have in those particular committees, that it would be maybe 2 with some backups in case somebody can't make it to or has to recuse. But as long as it's not, a quorum of those board members, no, the Open Meetings Act does not apply. So those meetings are not subject to the Open Meeting Act, and they do not need to be done in a public forum. And so a lot of the business can get streamlined with applications and things like that can be handled through email or, if need be, phone calls if they have, or additional emails. I hope that answers your question. If you have other questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
I can certainly add this on a future agenda as a future agenda item, but I just, especially given, the transition to the new agency, if this is something to streamline the process that the board wants to do, then, we've been informed by our counsel that we are legally able to do so. But certainly, if you want to open it up for further discussion as a official agenda item, I'll make sure to add it to December.
Yeah, I don't really understand. You were asking us to make this decision to do this. You didn't have it on the agenda as a consideration item?
No, I was not. I was not exactly asking decision because it's not. It wasn't an action item. It
sounds to me like it would be an action item if you're asking for an agreement to modify the structure and the way that the board operates.
I tell you what, Mr. Talbot, we'll put it on the agenda for the December meeting and just kind of resolve all doubt that way. I think that's probably the easiest, safest way to handle it.
Are there any questions regarding anything else I addressed? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next item is the report from the operations director.
Thank you, Chair Brown. Thank you, board members, for your service to the state. We are embarking on the initiation of the BHEC agency, and I would like to take a moment to thank all of my staff for their hard work in getting the transition moved over from HHSC to BHEC. I would also like to thank Mr. Spinks and his staff for all of their hard work in preparing the physical space for us, and for their tremendous welcoming attitude where our staff is concerned in bringing us in. They have done a tremendous job of creating a sense of team among two vastly different agencies becoming one. And I think that it deserves a great deal of admiration and respect for the efforts and accomplishments they have done. Starting up an agency from scratch should take about 2 years, and they've had 9 months basically to do it. And my hat is off to them for all of the work and all of the dedication that they have shown. We are still in the build-up process for all of our processes. The licensing department has hired several new staff, and so the training for them has begun. I'm looking forward to being able to provide more in-depth information at your next meeting, because by that time we will have all of our processes established, and we will have the ability to access our reporting in a more specific fashion. At this point, we don't have that, but it is coming up. Ms. Nowak, who is the CFO, does a tremendous job and has so many irons in the fire right now. I don't want to bug her about it. So over the next several weeks, the reporting process will get ironed out, and we will begin working on having a reliable data set for you moving forward. But just to keep it short, thank you, board members, for all of your work. Thank you, staff members, for all of your work. And thank you, Daryl and staff, for a tremendous job. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any question for Mr. Spear from the board members?
Hey, Tim, this is Brian Brumley, and I don't know if this is a question for you or for Daryl. I was looking at the new website, and one of the things that I use in teaching is the list of everybody who's been in trouble, and it was on the old one, and I can't find it anywhere on the new one. Is that something that's coming? Is it somewhere I just couldn't find it? Is it not there? Is it going to be there? What's going on with that?
We don't have it on the current website. Candidly, it's not on my radar right now. What we are doing is, rather than a list, you will be able to look up individual licensees through the online verification process. And if they've got a disciplinary order entered against them, you'll be able to access it through that way. But if you're looking for a target list, we don't have that.
Okay. And there's no plan for that to come back?
Not right now, but I guess if my orders, or if my marching orders become different, then it will be. But right now, it hasn't been my priority. I'll just say that.
Okay.
Mr. Spinks, this is Mark Talbot. In line with what Brian was just talking about, I noticed, and I may be wrong about this, that I couldn't find the agenda for this meeting, and I think that we were missing agendas from previous meetings and minutes on the actual website itself. It says that you can go to, I guess, obviously, what is it, the Secretary of State website, and try to upload the information that way. But we used to actually have it on our website, the agenda and the minutes from every meeting going back 3 or 4 years. Right? Is that ever going to be added?
Yeah, it's on there right now. We don't have all your minutes. If you click on the social worker board.
There was an agenda for today's meetings, for all of today's meetings?
Yeah, for today.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed it because I was looking for it earlier and didn't see it. Okay, all right.
You know, I don't have all the minutes from your prior meetings back, and I don't. You know, as we have time, we'll add those archival minutes. I just have not had time to add them.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Spear on the board? Okay. If not, thank you, Mr. Spear. Okay, we're going to move into public comment. And so if you are still in attendance with us, if you have comment you would like to make, if you'll please raise your hand in the participants area. And Alice, I'll ask you if you don't mind to drive this, please.
Sure. First participant with their hand raised is Will Francis.
Here we go. Oh. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to give comment here. Couple of different things. Really, just another big thanks for the discussion earlier about supervision plans. That is such a big part of it. I think we have an understanding. I may reach out to Daryl Spinks just to make sure that I have the exact details, and so we're sure about the retroactive stuff. I don't want to put any information out there, but I do think that is a huge thing. Wanted to say thank you for conference. Daryl Spinks and Alice Bradford will be speaking at the NASW conference October 8th through 10th. It is so fantastic to have them. I know how much our members are there. We will very much use that opportunity to make sure appropriate questions are asked and we have a good discussion. So just wanted to say big thanks. If there's any board members who are interested in attending that, as Chair Brown said, please feel free to email me and I'll be more than happy to make sure that we can get you all there as well. I wanted to just mention that we submitted a letter to the Texas Department of Insurance yesterday regarding telehealth and TDI covered plans. The governor's, I apologize, I have somebody here with me. The governor's waiver by TDI actually expires on the 12th, which is tomorrow. And so plans that are covered under TDI would not actually be required per sort of a reading of a recent bill, HB 3345, that requires telehealth to actually continue to reimburse on telehealth. And so we have a lot of concerns about the safety of both clients and providers. I've shared that letter with Chair Brown, and if anyone on the board would like to see it, please email me, or please, Chair Brown, feel free to share. If there's anything that the board would like to comment on that, we're more than happy to help you all understand a little bit about that, but we just want to make sure public and that the providers are all assured of their safety. The next thing I just want to mention, based on the discussion very briefly earlier about the committees, I would really hope that you all continue to have those committees in a public forum. I think one of the things that makes the board strong example of leadership is the transparency. And I would be very concerned if we did have professional development or rules or licensure committee move sort of behind the curtain and have that those discussions happen without the public, just the opportunity to be there, especially as we move into BHAC. And I think that there was a lot of questions about what this meant from a new agency standpoint. So my own recommendation or just our input would be that the transparency is an important part of that. I would also just like to say, when it comes to the website, I understand that right now the rules are up for review, that they were posted in the Texas Register and the governor has them. But, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I could not find the code of conduct. I could not find the rules as they exist. And I think that the public really ought to have the opportunity to see those. I do understand that, again, we're waiting on where they're going to be moved within the code itself. But I do still think that the public should be able to see the code of conduct. People should be able to see scope and whatnot. I do understand, again, all that is over in the Texas administrative code and the TAC itself. But again, this is maybe me. I did not see a link to the TAC or anything that would point them over there. But any ways that we can make sure that, from our standpoint, that the public is still able to see all the background and social work, that would be fantastic. And then, and again, I'm trying to speak fast, but finally, when it comes to continuing education, we do have major concerns that the board will not be certifying continuing education providers anymore. As Alice said, there was 869 people who have been certified through this board. It's an important function. I went and took a look at some of the other boards, the Texas Medical Board, the Nursing Board, the PT and the OT Board. And for them, if they do not certify, then they actually provide links for the associations or for national certifications or for others to show that this is where you can actually ensure that those CEs are being vetted. And we would encourage that. Again, NASW will continue to certify. We hope that y'all would potentially at least include the ability for people to see who is doing that if the board is not doing that, so that there can be some trust out there that there are still CEs being certified and that is still happening. And again, I'm more than happy to talk offline about any of that. I just want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Francis. Sandra Martin.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. For those of you who weren't in the first committee meeting earlier, I am Sandra Martin. I'm with Christian Counselors of Texas. We are about the business of stepping up our presence in places where decisions are made, because our voice, we figure, is a little bit unique in this area, and we feel the need to be heard with that. We're going to be covering all 4 boards. I'm the chairman, by the way, of a committee called Government Liaison, which we formed this year. We are currently recruiting stakeholders in each of the 4 boards, and we'll also be covering BHEC Council, the BHEC meetings as well. So we'll have you covered. We already have 2 stakeholders for the Social Workers Board, so you're already set. One of them is extremely enthusiastic. The other one is enthusiastic. So we'll be covering all 4 of these boards with stakeholders for each of the boards. I think that's all you need to know at this point. I just thank you for serving us in the way that you do. We appreciate that. And we look forward to, I said earlier, I haven't said yet at this point, that we have neglected the social workers. Christian Counselors of Texas has been heavy on the LPCs and the LMFTs, but we've been a little bit neglectful of the social workers, and we're going to correct that problem. So we're looking forward to a good relationship and an ongoing one, and look forward to being with you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Anybody else for public comment, please raise your hand.
Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for your comments. Appreciate your presence and being with us and participating in the process. Okay, the next agenda item is scheduled for our next meeting. Or do we need to look at scheduling for 2021 as well?
Yes. So the next meeting is scheduled for Friday, December 4th, 2020. But we don't have any dates on the calendar for 2021, and September is usually the meeting in which we do that. So the first Friday, first off, are we sticking with this day of the week?
Board members, what are your thoughts?
What about if we stick with this with Friday for board meeting? When would we do predetermination conferences?
So it's my understanding that informal conferences are kind of also scheduled as needed because they're closed meetings. And our enforcement unit will be scheduling those. Patrick, correct me if I'm wrong.
We could still have a predetermined day, like the day before, to do ISCs, if that's what you're talking about. You know, we can do those if we've got the panel ready and we want to do them. The other thing we can do, since they'll be possible by Zoom, we can do those alternatively other days other than having to do them at the day before the meeting.
Okay.
So, Ray, I guess we're specifically talking just about the other committees and full board. So the first Friday in March 2021 would be March 5th.
Okay.
Okay. Then the first Friday in June is June 4th.
And historically, has there been an issue with the first weekend in June because of something that happens in Austin? Or are we clear?
I'm not aware of anything.
When is South by Southwest?
March.
Okay.
There's
Usually
not a motorcycle
coincides with
rally in June?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was a motorcycle rally.
Yeah, because we used to come in the first weekend. I'm just assuming that we may at some point be coming back in, but it doesn't matter to me.
So I just looked it up, but it doesn't look like they have 2021. Oh wait, June 10th through 13th, 2021 is the
Right.
Republic of Texas Motorcycle Rally.
Okay.
So June 4th shouldn't run into that. Let me just double check South by Southwest for March. South by Southwest. Their website doesn't have any 2021 dates.
They were talking about bankruptcy because they didn't get to have it this year.
It's rough. Yeah, so typically it would probably wouldn't be that first week anyway, because it usually coincides with like a spring break, which would be like the second week. March 5th is in the first week, so I think we're still safe there.
Yeah, the rodeo is not till later as well, Austin Rodeo. So that's after South by Southwest.
Okay.
The first Friday in September 2021 is September 3rd, but that is Labor Day weekend. So
I would propose we move that to the 10th.
okay. And then the first Friday in December is the 3rd.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Looks like it's set.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Spear, I don't mean to interrupt, Chair Brown. Tim?
Yes.
Can we probably need to set up a shared calendar between all the EDs so that it's just for board meeting purposes. That way we make sure we're not scheduling 2 meetings on one day again, like what happened today.
Agreed. I am working on that.
Okay, I started to say we might want to put that together.
Okay. The next agenda item is items for consideration for future meetings. Anything from the board members? Okay. If not, then the last item is there a motion to adjourn and a second?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate everyone's attendance, time, and looks like we adjusted well to the Zoom process. So
Thank you, everyone.
Very good. Good job, everyone.
Thank y'all. Bye.
take care.